Good evening and welcome to another Monday Night Live. Hopefully you've enjoyed watching a little bit of Monday PGA Tour golf, bit of sawgrass, and hopefully you enjoyed the winner, Rory McIlroy. They were sort of bludgeoning each other with double bogeys and triple bogeys and water balls and all sorts. But super nice to see Rory get across the line. Another early season win will make him joyous going into the Masters.
Got to make the odds ridiculous, isn't it?
Yeah. I'm surprised Scotty didn't necessarily or give a better showing this week.
It's interesting, isn't it? You'd think his game round there, it's a course that rewards just good golf, not the mixture of players at the top was shows how the course plays. So for someone who's normally that steady, but maybe the old avocado gates had more of an effect on his hand than we thought.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, as usual, we have the phone and the iPad this week to take all of your questions. We've got the audio perfect, I believe. James has mixed and diced up the audio this week, so hopefully it's a little bit better. Sorry about that last week with Henny's microphone. As usual, we're taking all of your questions. I've got a question. What is more important, launch angle on the driver or spin rate?
I would say it depends on your speed. I think if you're moderate speed, get launch because the spin is less important at low speeds because it's actually about getting consistent carry. And the launch angle is less important at high speed. If the spin's good, if it's high launch or low launch, you'll still hit a long way. So high spin hurts you at high speed, low launch hurts you at moderate speed.
And another question I have for you: if I am someone that has too much bend, am I better off?
So that wasn't meant to be.
Am I better off working at curing the bend or getting a better strike?
That's an interesting one.
I'm talking more from a sort of a
fitting
fitting
shot shape.
Yeah, I'm talking from sort of efficiency on a fitting purpose, because I assume that you get guys and girls come in that have 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 degrees of open face to path. And if that's new reference point to you, a face to path value is where the face is pointing relative to the path. The bigger differential, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, the more bend you'll see in the sky. So when you've got a big bending ball to the right, you might have a face to path value of 8, 9, 10 open. Now, if you've turned up with 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 in a fitting, whilst it's hard, you're going to work with those data points. The strike pattern is probably something that you're going to want to improve, which in its own self, all of a sudden you've got spin rates that you need to necessarily.
Yeah, but that can happen with high face angle. So if you're very open or very shut through impact and hitting a lot of shape both ways, neutralizing that will change the flight quite a bit. I think strike is probably the most important thing. If you've got strike, then you can get the other bits right. I think with my own game, I've always felt that if I'm striking it well, then you're 90% of the way there. If you're consistently striking it, because you can be delivering the head with beautiful timing, but be using a manipulation to open or close the face, and it actually is the minor bit of from a fitting, but the jigsaw puzzle, and you can work out where the launch and spin on an iron is going to go. Driver's harder because it has a bigger effect, and you might fit the completely wrong head style. But yeah, then if someone's neutral delivery and missing strike, then I'd be looking at the clubs going, okay, what's falling out of sync to stop you getting strike if your delivery is good? So actually, yeah, so strike allows you to then focus on, right, can we improve the other bits?
And
I think I answered that.
Yeah, and the reason why I'm asking these questions is because these are quite basic questions, but certainly insightful. I think we get so many wonderful questions on the channel, and sometimes they can be quite in depth, and you'd like to think that all of a sudden we are only for the advanced golfer. Well, we are not. We are here to answer all of your questions. So thinking about it from a completely beginner standpoint, you've just joined the game, you bought yourself a set of clubs off the rack, and you're down the range and you're whacking away and you're seeing the ball go off in all different types of directions. How important might a club fitting be for someone that is new to the game?
It could genuinely be very important. If you've got a set of clubs that's horribly inappropriate, So if you've just started, you've got very heavy, then that's going to be hard. Yeah, heavy is more manageable the better your technique gets. But if it's hard work at our level to manage the wrong club, it's really hard work at a beginner level, and then it makes improving much tougher. And that's not fun, and the game's meant to be fun. So actually having a set of clubs that challenges you a bit, that gives you kind of development potential there, that can help you improve more quickly and make the game more fun. So there's a bigger proportionate difference it could make at that end of the scale than for the scratch golfer trying to nick a shot here or there.
Yeah, because I mean, I had Mike, a client of mine, that was ever so nervous about coming in for a fitting, done a lot of swing work, new to the game, and he went away and he just went with one iron in the end, Mike Keating, but on the back of that, it's given him such a polarized feel with his bag. You know, I know he's gone on to get the rest of the bag now, but he walked away with this 6-iron and was practicing with it, and then it was like, goodness me, the rest of my bag is so ill-fitted. Yet at that moment in time, he didn't feel he was ready to make the plunge of the golf to do a full set. Not necessarily a newbie golfer, but someone that didn't necessarily have the confidence of someone that we might see in the fitting bag for
and he can really strike a ball as well. So and actually goes back to Mike's scenario, goes back to your question about strike or face angle. Actually, strike. And actually, what was great when he came in, he said, "Look, I know I'm working on things. I know the dispersion's going to be off, or the odd shot's going to be off. But you know what? Whatever can give me consistency and help me get more stability to my game, great, because then I can work on that. And then when someone's going to do that, then you can make an allowance for some of the numbers that will improve and change as the technique improves. Because knowing he's putting in the hours in with you.
Yeah, brilliant. And so I think it's nice to talk about some basic stuff. I mean, basic is, I don't think it is necessarily that basic, but I think some questions that maybe people shy away from on the channel because of you guys and girls knowing Acron serial number shafts and all kind of things that get me going, by the way. So anyhow, I thought a slightly different opening to the show, and hopefully that's given you some insights. But let's get on to the questions. Matthew Priestley, I think Matthew gets in quite early every week actually. Evening, gents. Nice to see you, Matthew.
Could be a new handle.
Yeah. Evening, gents. How's the elite titanium stack up against the other big players?
Unfortunately, don't know yet because it's been pushed back from a timing point of view. So we have our demos on order, and as soon as they come in, we will let you know. But its design is around forgiveness. So certainly that's the design principle of it. It's not meant to be a low spin cannon. It is the titanium allows them to go slightly bigger on the head, spread more weight away from the face. Then you've got a front back weight to dial in spin. But it's not designed as a cannon. It's meant to be about forgiveness. It'll be interesting to see how that pans out.
Yeah, brilliant. Golf Nerd 3. Have you seen the way forward golf is doing fittings? What do you think?
So we've seen a couple of people who've come in who have actually had a fitting done by them. And I think what they're trying to do, which is great, is have a pack that you can send out to someone that you hit a load of shots, gather some data, send it back to them. And it's great because you've got some standardized clubs, or I say some, I mean, you've got a range of about, I think it's about 15 of them, maybe more, 15 to 20 that you hit, that you log strike points and shot patterns, but what it doesn't tell them is the balance. And things like the swing weight is really, really critical as to why is something working better. You're just hitting them, and on the day, did you just hit a particular one better? Did you just dial one in a little bit more? So it's great as a baseline, but some of the results we've seen have had very interesting swing weights. Very, very light.
Okay, interesting. Simon Muggleton, got a chance to swap my old Mizuno driver for a TSR2 driver and at a very good price. Only worry is my bad shot is low heel. From memory, does the TSR2 offer much forgiveness on heel strikes? Thank you.
Yeah, pretty good. Pretty good. Certainly, I mean, for me, I went TSR3 from an old M4, and it was much better out the heel. The Titleists have generally been pretty good across the face. You might get a bit more spin than some out the heel. But ball speed retention was quite good. I think across both TSR and then into GT, they've been a good all-round head, but probably a little more spinny than some heads might be, but ball speed retention pretty good.
Very good. Pro V1 David, evening gentlemen. Time to renew my grips before the new season starts. Current Golf Pride MCC +4 to Lambkin sonar plus wrap calibrate. Will this affect the swing weight?
Shouldn't do. Shouldn't do there. If they're both the standard size, which I believe they are from that, then no, very, very similar. I mean, you may well get a very, very slight change, less than half a point, 0.2, 0.3 of a point, but it shouldn't have a major impact, no.
Very good. Richard Skinner. Hi guys, good evening Richard. Can you test the Mizuno 243 irons versus the PXG 0317T please? Love the show guys.
Certainly.
Thank you very much Richard. While Simon jets off to go and find those clubs, Joseph L on my channel. Been watching Stuart's videos. He does a great job explaining all the details and he has helped me tremendously. That's great to hear, Joseph. Thank you for that kind feedback. Matt M, evening gents. Stuart, wonder if you could provide some help. Past few weeks been finding I'm striking off the toe on the irons and driver. Any suggestions to why and what drills could help? Thank you. Well, let's give you a little drill to help you. I think it's always, I don't know why I've picked up Simon's 2-iron because that's not the best golf club to do this drill with, but we'll go with it anyway. I think, the toe strike can come from many different ways, but ultimately you're looking to feel a little bit more pressure in your heels at address, which will allow you to get a little bit more tipped over the golf ball. And then what I want you to do is just make some swings where you're just focusing on the heels of your feet, just half swings. And as you're doing that, what you want to feel is like you're starting to get a little bit more tipped forwards. And as you're getting a bit more tipped forwards and a little bit lower with the handle, I want you to feel like you can get lower with the handle and keep the club head off the mat. So you can see an exaggeration, I'm going lower with the handle, and can you see how the club head is staying off the mat? Now, effectively, what I'm doing is I'm pushing the handle down and the club head is going out. Well, if the club head is going out because I'm pushing the handle down, I'm going to start to move the heel out to the golf ball. Could be scary for many golfers, but it's a way of sensing how you could feel like the heel of the golf club could go out to the ball so that you start to get more of a centered strike. So a little bit more into the heels of your feet, get the handle more down and push the head out in some little swings and you'll start to feel the strike, find the sweet spot a little bit more. Hope that helps. Yeah, I don't know why I picked 2 on that.
Well, it's the nearest one,
what a
wasn't it?
silly idea that was.
So the 317T and the 243, actually not wildly dissimilar structures. The main difference is the PXG, it's an enclosed head, so it's infilled with, it's an elastomer type material, which dampens vibration down, supports the face a little bit, so allows them to go a bit thinner, but it really tones the sound down, whereas the 243 has a little kind of bar in the back that tunes the sound, but similar, a little bit of face tech. So very comparable products from a tech point of view. I'm going to expect the PXG to be a little bit lower spin, but we've had really good results with both heads. So
brilliant.
right.
Have you hit many balls today?
No, the 3 before you came in. Hit a lot yesterday, so I'm a bit stiff.
Ah.
Yeah.
But Simon's been working on his setup.
Yeah, so you lot have all made me feel slightly self-conscious about
Self-conscious.
it. No, I did a bit, I looked at my setup yesterday and I looked like I was tipping over, then moved up and then back into it. So I'm trying to just stop some of that movement to try to just stabilise a bit, less compensations.
Like it?
So I'll probably shank the first one then, he says confidently. Oh, win.
Flushed. Flushed.
So, very, very stable head. I think the thing to note with this is the sound is much softer than a lot of heads that have that kind of tech because of that infill. So if you like a soft feeling head with a bit of tech, actually the 317T, really, really good club. 17 degrees launch, 4.6, 4.7, as in 4,647 on spin. So lower mid, but good overall performance. And I'm going to quit while I'm ahead on that one.
Yeah, that was tremendous.
If anything, the Mizuno may launch slightly lower as well, I might expect.
That was a tremendous strike. and flight.
I think the key is not to expect it, and then it just comes as a nice surprise.
Just by the way, I'm not standing here texting people. I'm just here looking on our feed because our iPad is not charged. So just in case you think I'm being
Thought it was
rude.
plugged in, but she did. So slightly thinner top line on Mizuno. And a little bit more of a click to it. Actually launched that a bit higher. Slightly higher launch there, but spin up about, well, taking into account the launch angle, 200 to 300 revs. So I added a bit of loft there, but similar ball speed because it flighted a bit higher, slightly less carry. I'd expect the PXG to be a little hotter because of the spin, but both lovely heads, forged frames, but the PXG will feel a bit softer.
Can't beat a forged frame. Tony, by the way, good evening, Tony. Evening, guys. Loving the Ventus Red in my fairways and steel fibres in my irons setup. Thank you, Simon. But can you recommend an equivalent for a hybrid, budget and high end, please? Thanks.
So the new Ventus hybrids have been very good. Obviously, they're going to be the upper end of things. And another upper end for Tony, where we try and not go too head heavy with the iron shafts in particular. This is the upper end, the Tensei 1K Pro hybrids, really, really good shafts to keep the bounce away from the bottom end. And then more of a budget end, actually, Acra iron shafts or a steel fibre, actually, in the hybrid. Steel fibre would swing a little heavier, but the Acra, the iron shafts, the IS series, you can have an 80 gram in that, which doesn't swing overly tip heavy and still stays pretty stable.
Very good indeed. Alistair Campbell, good evening, Alistair. Could I get some advice on how to choose whether players' distance irons suit you better? I.e., what are the metrics that help you understand that?
So something like a player's distance, there's a bit of tech in it. So it's a smaller frame. So I mean, the player's distance category is about that wide, based on you've got something like the 243 or the 317T heads there. I would put in the player's distance category because they are the kind of the smaller frame, moderate spin, but they're designed to get a little bit of extra ball speed, but they're on the smaller side head-wise. Some people put the T200 into it. I wouldn't call that a player's distance head. I'd call that more, so that's working more towards a distance iron. But a player's distance head has a bit of tech to help gain ball speed progression through the set. It's almost like a bit of a combo. So a T150, a 243, and I530 is probably just about on the player's distance iron side of things. All of those sorts of heads where you've got a bit of tech into it. And that's to help ball speed progression, normally bring spin down a bit. A player's head, you might call like a blade or a CB head, there's very little tech. T100 is probably the far end of that, where there's a bit of perimeter weighting, but it's not designed for speed. That's how I would determine it. That may not be the industry determinant, but that's how I would determine it.
If you are new to a Monday Night Live, we do this every single week. Monday, 6 p.m, Simon and I, sometimes I flit in and out, but mostly I'm here. Simon normally fits in and out as well, but he's always here. So make sure you come and join us and tell your friends. We'll answer all your questions on equipment and golf coaching and anything else you want to chat about.
So I'm actually flitting out next Monday.
Are you?
But I've collared Nick for next Monday.
Oh, so am I doing it with Nick?
Doing it with Nick, yeah.
I'm going to have to put some makeup on because he's a good-looking lad and younger
just
and less grey hair.
No, I'm with Titleist in California. So fly out on Sunday, fly back Wednesday night.
Are you?
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah,
Right.
I'm smirking. Yes.
Have you swung that past
apart from the fact that the jet lag's going to be horrendous.
Have you swung that past the missus?
She's in Zurich this week with work.
Ah, right.
It's a work trip. Trip.
Yeah. Got it.
They are organising a game of golf, but it's a work trip.
Got it. Of course it is. Yeah. You have a work trip away. Anyway, Will, how is the new Swixen driver for a draw player? Was put into a 12-degree smoke last season because I needed more spin. Would like to go down in loft for more ball speed, but need to maintain some spin. Thank you.
Okay, so actually the ZXI is not the highest spin head out. There's actually, I mean, depending on the player and your strike point, there has to be that disclaimer because it's different for everybody in terms of what's a moderate spin and a low spin. But they're good for ball speed. That we have certainly seen with them, and you can move the heavyweight heel or toe depending on your strike point. I'd say they're a solid option certainly for mid spin. I mean, G440 is good for mid spin. That's a really, really stable head at mid spin.
Lovely. I had Doug Elliott in today, one of the contributors
So
on
I
our
always
channel.
think he's Italian based on. It sounds almost like Lawrence Delalio, doesn't it?
Yes,
Doug
it does.
Elliott.
It does. Well, I can tell you, he is further from Italian. Yeah, he couldn't be further from Italian. Lovely, lovely chap. Came down lefty. He was a lefty. Had to pull out some lefting demonstrations. Evening, gents. Great lesson with Stu earlier. This is Doug, by the way. I used muscles I did not know I had. I'm absolutely buzzing with the new setup. Stu, you've answered my question on lesson or fitting first. Well done. Mark Rowley, High Vella's currently playing a hazardous RDX Smoke 60 gram stiff driver. Looking at the Basra. Basra? Is that really a name of a club? Yeah. Basra E42 X5 CT Lite. I mean, who knows this stuff? Clearly Mark does. To increase clubhead speed, currently 98 miles an hour. Any thoughts, please?
It could be a good thing, could be a bad thing. So the Basara Mitsubishi shaft, they did.
Basara, is it spelled?
It can be either.
Oh,
I mean, I've
right,
heard it
okay.
pronounced both ways. I don't know which way is the right one. It being Japanese, probably Basra.
Basra.
I would imagine.
With a sharp.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. But it's one of those. Sometimes going lighter can lose you speed because there isn't enough to build speed with. Sometimes it's a good thing. So it is ultimately it's one of those where it's a definitely maybe answer. I'm afraid that one.
Got it. We love those definitely maybes. Golf Nerd 3. Do you plan on getting the TaylorMade TRK-R balls?
They are on order. Actually, I had an email about them. There, we've got 6 dozen of each on order, and we just got told that there'll be production shortages until April next year. So, did we want more? But yeah, they are on their way. Hopefully, imminently.
Brilliant.
I think very beginning of April potentially is when we'll have them.
Papa B. Good evening, Papa B. Nice to have you with us as usual. Hello, young men. Can you please hit and compare the Dollar Taper 120S and the Project X IO 6.0 in the Mizuno Pro 245? You're the best.
Dollar Taper 120.
Dollar Taper
And the
120.
6.0 IO.
Yes. Yes. Daniel Winterbottom, he retracted 2 questions. I can only think he's commenting on your trousers.
What, the beauty.
The majesty of them.
Majesty,
The
that's
majesty
the
of
word.
them. I've got a pair of those, little Ted Baker numbers. So we'll press straight on. Macca09, hope you're keeping well, chaps. We are buoyant this Monday in March. Hope I'm still quite new to golf. That's great to hear you new to the game and don't currently have a driver in the bag. What would be the best way forward in this department? Great question.
So if you're new, it's finding something that you can get off the tee consistently. It doesn't have to be a driver. For a lot of players, right at the beginning, driver, it's a long club, there's not a lot of loft on it, so it's hard to use. So actually, it may well be that for some players, it's ironically, it's a driving iron or a hybrid or a fairway wood. It might be a mini driver, but the shorter shaft on those clubs generally helps consistency. Or it could be building a driver at a shorter length. There are now a lot of options out there, but it would be something I would say, if anywhere you can go to trial a driver head at different lengths, and then it doesn't have to cost you the earth. If you get an idea on what's a solid option, then actually any good fitter would be able to tell you, right, if from the last 2 or 3 models you could find this head, bring it in, we'll put a shaft in it. Might not be one of the latest ones. Although Callaway this year, the AI Smoke Max is continued at a dropped price from previous year. So it's still a current head whilst they got stock, which means it's covered under warranties and things like that. So that would be the flip side of it. But yeah, you can get a very good driver now.
Yeah, brilliant. Good
It was the
insights.
MP245, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. The Mizuno Pro 245. I've just seen the Yorkshire Blades question. Oh no, we'll come back to that. I was going to say something else, so it doesn't matter. Daniel Winterbottom has come back with a question. He obviously had to think about it. Hi guys, I'm looking at having a loft and lie check and retrofitting some G430 FWSs, fairway woods.
I'm assuming so, yeah.
But unsure what golf ball I'm going to be playing this season. Would you recommend choosing the ball first? Good question.
No, because actually you might find that choosing the ball first compromises the ball flight. So actually get your gapping done or the fitting done and at the same time ask the fitter the question about golf ball, and they can tell you whether there's one that's going to make a spin profile that's going to make a significant difference. If you're a high spinner, then it might be depending on what type of ball you're using, it might be an AVX or a TP5X, or the new Callaway Chrome Tour is pretty low spin. If you're a low spinner, it might be that the switch on the diamond, Z-Star Diamond in the irons really takes a spin up. So they'd be able to advise you if there is a ball type that you're better off using, and then pick the ball.
Very good. Tom Ashmore, evening gents, evening Tom. Just got fit into some Oban CT115 stiff iron shafts. Do they do a wedge shaft to complement, or would you just carry that onto the wedges?
You could use the CT125 in the wedges, but sometimes a different profile of shaft. So I play my CT115s in my irons down to gap wedge, and then I go into a modus 120 in my 55 and 60. Because I use the shaft differently, I use the mass differently on the partial shots. So it's not always an automatic to go straight through. It can be that the heavier version of the same shaft profile works really well. It can be that a different shaft altogether. But normally, 70–80% of the time, a roughly 10% or 10 gram heavier shaft is the route to go when you go to the partial shots.
Shako says he always enjoys the show. Thank you, Shako. We always enjoy doing it. Could you compare the Titleist GT3 to the Ping G440 LST and Elite TD drivers? How do they differ? Drivers swing around 100 miles an hour with typically 3 to 4 degrees of up.
Okay, I've got to hit this one first.
Yeah, that one first. Yeah, you're going to be worn out tonight.
Help me
They're
get my back moving.
They are working you hard.
So Project X IO, actually I believe this shaft might be on its way out. It probably holds, the brands will probably hold a bit of stock of it, but it is on its way out with the Project X Red on its way in, as I understand it, if I understand correctly from January. But the IO individually optimized stands for. So as you go up in the flexes, it gets progressively stiffer as a profile. So the 6R, 110 grams, quite a tight feeling shaft from a kind of a, let's say, a heel point of view, kind of mid to tip balanced. You get a little bit of load through the handle section, fairly tight through the tip. 110 grams, pretty moderate weight. And then the dollar taper in the 120 stiff, whilst technically these are both the stiff shafts, it's 10 grams heavier, so 120 versus 110, but a very different balance point. The balance moves up the shaft. So stable through the midsection, in principle, should be slightly more responsive through the tip. But I'm just in the pickup there, you can kind of feel there's more kind of guts in the shaft there. So you're swinging more this bit of the shaft, with this bit of the club, so the midsection rather than down the head end. So I get a little bit more pop out the tip, but I've got to work that through a little bit more. So hence well, it might not just be the club making me come off balance. It might be getting used to having my weight on my heels, but I've got to just fetch it through a little bit more. So if the extra mass is a good thing, then the dollar taper 120 will suit you more than the IO. If you swing the head rather than move the handle, then the IO may work a little bit better than the dollar taper. Both great shafts though.
Fantastic.
A little bit lower spin out of the dollar taper.
So don't rest. You get yourself off and get that driver.
Triple Diamond GT3.
Yeah, and the Elite TD drivers.
So the Elite TD.
A Ping G440 LST and the Elite TD. Okay. Goodness me, it sounds like Morse code. Goodness me. So Yorkshire Blade, I'm going to jump on and just answer Yorkshire Blade question. He says, hi guys, great show as always. Thank you very much, TYB. When using TrackMan, what are the 5 data points you would have up? Well, if you've watched any of my content, which it sounds like you haven't, TYB, why not? Angle of attack, club path, face angle, face to path, if you are working on golf swing. And if you can, have a couple of extra boxes up as the impact location, height, and heel and toe strike. That would be the 6 or 4 that I'd have up if you're working on your golf swing. Now, when it comes to fitting, you're going to need a bit more up. You're going to need a bit more up because you're going to need to, you're trying about making sure that the swing's right or within a certain tolerance, and also the efficiency of launch angles, spin rates, carry numbers, ball speeds, smash factors. So there are a lot more going on. If you're going into a fitting, and you're going to use a TrackMan, the fitter will be there to help you with those data points. So I wouldn't take that on your own, but if you're in the bay and you're using a TrackMan and working on your swing, I'd check those 4 out. Once again, attack angle, club path, face to angle, and face to path. They are the 4. If you can get intimate with those 4 boxes, I promise you, you will be closer to mastering this game than all of the other boxes. They're a waste of time. They are disciples of those 4, in my opinion.
Yeah, so from a swing point, like yesterday, perfect example, I had the launch and the spin numbers up because they're just up, but the only ones I was looking at were the angle of attack, path, face to path. And I could see if I was coming back off of it, the angle of attack shallowed out and you just stay on top of it more. But from, as you say, from a fitting, the launch and the spin and the efficiency number, those are the key ones. You then look at, for certain players, sort of land angle, height at a more moderate speed to make sure you're getting enough of that height into the shot. But yeah, I completely agree.
Yeah, brilliant. Let's have a look.
Right, LST first. So this is just a general comparison / comment.
Yes.
Right.
Comparisoni.
Make sure this switches onto the driver so it doesn't provide a strange gearing based on a 6-iron head. So LST's been, actually when it's been good, it's been very good. I've had times where I've questioned how much ball speed it's got off of it relative to some of the others, but sits very, very, very clean, very square. Base of head weight's a little heavier than some. But it's a more muted sound than some. So like that 2-2 on spin, it's I don't want to kind of go on too long, but I'll do 2. It's low spin without being silly low spin, would be the way I would say with the LST. Oh, that's right out the bottom. That was a waste of time. But the first shot was much more representative.
An honest appraisal.
Yeah, that was a rotten swing. But the first one was solid. It's a mid to low mid launch and low mid spin. It's not a knuckleball in terms of spin. There are going to be other heads that will take the spin down more for you than the Ping LST. But the upside of it is it's actually really quite a safe driver head for a high-speed player, which is why you see a lot of the tour guys playing them, because they don't necessarily need that low spin ahead, but they like more compact head size to stop the ball kind of just popping up off the face as well. So take that so the screen stay on. Right, Titleist GT3. Very, very classic look. It hasn't got the turbulators that the Ping's got.
The what?
Turbulators, the little notches on the top for aerodynamics.
Got it. Of course. Why wouldn't you have turbulators?
Helps alignment as well, actually, a lot of people have found.
Right, yeah. Can't align a driver up because he hasn't got turbulators.
Yeah, slightly more compact look. Got a different, they've both got, they've all got composite crowns, actually. High on the face, that was, yeah, not wonderful. The line of the swing was okay, but that was a hideous strike. Let's try that one again, take 2. Right.
You're allowed bad shots.
So a little bit of a more solid tone to it, left that right a bit. I think the GT and the LS are fairly similar on spin for me, but ball speed up just a little bit with the Titleist versus the Ping. So I think they're quite comparable in terms of ball flight. Both we have seen really low spins out of both of them, but on the whole, they're fairly safe from a spin point of view without being a knuckleball. But moderate launch, maybe a hair lower launch out of the Ping head on average, but very good all-round heads, but more ball speed out of the Titleist is what we've generally seen. And finally, sorry, nearly there. So the Elite Triple Diamond has, you could argue, the most versatility out of any of them, because you've got the ability to move the heavyweight front and back, although on both the Ping and the Titleist you can move the weight heel and toe for strike point, which you can't do on the Callaway. But the hosel, the adapter on the Callaway, gives you the most versatility in terms of loft up, loft down, close face, square it off, without moving twisting the shaft around. So this sits a little bit more open than the other two as well. So if you're a hooker of the ball, then not a bad head. Generally, the Callaway is good for keeping launch up and being low spin, but they've gone a bit safer with this model this year. So a little bit more launch, got under it a little bit more, bit higher in the face, but launch up, but the spin stayed really nice and low. Not my greatest strike, but in terms of that, this one when it's good, I still think previous models of Callaway have been a bit faster than this one, but this does not have the nosedive, knuckly spin that the old models used to have. But if you want high launch, low spin, this is a great head. If you want to keep launch down a little bit more with lower side of mid on spin, the other two.
Very good, very good. Good testing, Simon. Not easy, not easy, especially if you've done a little bit of a tweak to a setup. It's like, then you're caught in between the devil and the deep blue sea. It's like, I know I can make this work, but I've just spent 2 hours practicing and I don't want to just go back to that.
Yeah,
so,
you've got to, I thought about it, like when I started, you've got to commit.
Yeah, just go.
If I'm going to do it, I've got to do it, and then,
my favourite handle, the left rough, ZXi3 Utility, good to see you, versus the T200 3-iron. Are they similar in horsepower? Woof. I like the thinner sole of T100 4-iron, looking at adding a driving iron forward to the top of the bag.
So the Strixon, so Strixon's good for ball speed. I've just refreshed mine to get a bit more ball speed from the old ZU 6.5. Are they similar horsepower? Yeah. Yes, I think T200 is pretty strong hitting head actually, but if anything doesn't launch it quite as high for me as the ZXiU. Yeah. So slightly different ball flights, a little more forgiveness out the Strixon potentially than the Titleist, but the Titleist for raw ball speed is really strong.
Liam Water. Evening, guys. Stu, I was watching you push down on that 2-iron and wondering how much wrist angle I should have at setup, please. First of all, how would you measure it? That would be my first question. How tall are you? What club are you talking about? It's different for all. So I would just go with more than you've got. That would be a good place to start. Hope that helps. Because, yeah, how long's a piece of string? The Yorkshire Blade. Hi, guys. Great show. I've answered that one already. Matt M. Hi, Simon. Have the elite driver and fairway driver, have the elite driver and fairway. Hi Simon, have the elite driver and fairway, comma, driver is Diamana BB shaft,
He
comma.
has them.
Oh, right.
I think.
Oh, so yeah, there was no I in there. Sorry. Fairway C6 blue, looking at hybrid, what sort of shaft would you suggest looking at with similar characteristics? Shall I start again?
Sorry.
So, hi Simon, I have the elite driver and fairway wood.
Yep.
Driver is a Diamana BB shaft. Fellas and girls out there, help me out here. Put in all of the vocab. There's a lot of questions I'm asking. I have the elite driver and fairway. Yep. Driver is Diamana BB shaft. Yep. Fairway is a C6 blue. Okay. Looking at the hybrid, what sort of shaft would you suggest looking at with similar characteristics?
So both the C6 blue and the blue board, they're both Mitsubishi shafts. They're both the blue, kind of broadly speaking, the blue board profile. A little bit of response through the middle. C6 is more responsive than the blue board in the tip. So if you wanted something with a little bit more feedback like that, then I think through hybrid shafts. I mean, depending on what weights of shaft you're playing, the C6 does have a hybrid shaft, which is a solid option. It's in the black series. And depending on how much you want to spend, the TPT, the mids, the high, and the TPTs are a little bit of fairly mid-balance and and have a bit of response to them. But those are top end in terms of price. But they have a lovely feel to them and give you a little bit of kickback. So I quite like those, but they're the top end of the scale. Say C6 at the kind of moderate end of the scale have their own hybrid shaft as well. So I'll probably kind of look at those two. There are a few others in between, but those two would be the starting point.
Cracking name, Rishi. Love that name. Evening both. Love the show. Do the align grips move around in hot weather? If so, how could I check? Issue with a couple of clubs, 9 and driver, face angle pointing left at impact.
If they've been installed correctly, they shouldn't, because the glue from the tape underneath adheres to them and they hold. Grips can creep very slightly over time, but in hot weather, they shouldn't do. And now it depends what your definition of hot is. It could be, if it's like kind of 40 degrees, I say they shouldn't, but they might. The way of checking them is, so I play with the calibrate, the Lambkin calibrates. So one.
Delicious grip, by the way.
Thank you very much. Yeah, they've stopped making these, which is really. They've still the other series of it, but is to look down the grip and see whether the logo on the top has moved. If that's moved offline, and you know it was straight before, then yes, it's twisted. And if you've got a line on the back, then there is a line that you can look at down the back to see whether that's sort of snaking a little bit or skewed off. That's another way of seeing, has it twisted, has it moved?
Sculptura X2. Could you please explain where you got that handle from?
He-Man.
Yes. Evening Ping
major.
G425 driver, swing around 100 miles an hour. Is it worth changing up to the Elite or 440 or stick with what I have?
It's still a good head. They are loud. There's no doubt about that. But actually, generally speaking, pretty good. Out the heel, they might be a little bit worse now for ball speed and spin than the current heads. They're still a well-designed head, and normally it's 3 series before you start to see a tangible gain. So they've had the 430 and the 440 are only 2 series on. There's a chance you might find a bit of performance, but ultimately if the club was set up well for you and has performed well, it's still likely to be marginal gains.
Job to Journey.
But you won't need headphones on some of the new ones.
Very good. Job to Journey, aka Peter Cantor. Now, Job to Journey is a new YouTube channel that a good friend of Precision Golf's, Peter Cantor, has started up. I did a little podcast and I waffled on for over an hour about my journey in the game and what's influenced me and all the highs and lows of the game. If you want to go and check it out, head over to Job to Journey. Maybe James can pop a link up on the bottom or in the feed. Go check that out. It's a great hour and a bit, if I may say so myself. His question this evening is, Evening Stu, as we move into the spring, how would you recommend practicing those tricky 40 to 70 yard shots which sit between full pitch and greenside chip? That's a good question. It's a good question.
He's a very considered man.
He is a considered man. He is a considered man. Now, I would go and, if you can, get yourself on the practice ground. And I see this a lot. You know, when I was fortunate enough to work on the DP World Tour, and you'd watch the guys warm up on the range, invariably, if you're an amateur, you go straight to the range, you pull your 7-iron out of the bag and you take a full swing at your 7-iron and off you go. Now, if you've stood on a DP World Tour range, you'll have seen Tommy Fleetwood and the likes of Rory standing there hitting some little chips out there. And they're literally little chips like so. And they're warming up their strike. Now, if you're in the position where you can get yourself onto the range and the cost of balls aren't an issue, get yourself on the range and line them up like so for ease of use and just work on hitting some little chip shots. And with each chip shot, hit the ball a little bit further. So your first chip shot might only go 4 or 5 yards. And then your next one might go 7 or 8. And then your next one might go 10 or 12. And now all of a sudden, what it feels like as you're moving down the line, it feels a bit more seamless that you're making the swing a little bit longer. And then when you start to get to the length of 40 yards, it doesn't feel like it's anything too different in tempo and change of direction to your chip shot. And it will probably help your chipping as well as your pitching, because you've got to realize that when you start to get these swings much shorter, we're so used to making the cadence of a backswing, the speed of a backswing and the length of a backswing of X, and then pulling it from there. Now all of a sudden someone said to you, you've got to hit it 40 yards and your length of backswing is now a quarter of what you're used to. And that pull moment when you move the golf club down that starts to generate some load and then you still need some swing, that can be quite tricky to harmonize and sync up. So really start with some chip shots and work up the line. And you can even do as quick as I was doing it, just working up the line, lengthening the swing until you get to where you are. And then once you want to be at the distance of 40 yards, then just keep hitting those shots where you just feel like you can start to get a bit more rhythm. I think when you scrape, hit, a few practice swings, scrape, hit, a few practice swings, I think it can be quite clunky. But if you get them on a tee, line them up, and start to feel a little bit more flow to it, it's a really nice drill. Hopefully that helps.
I think the thing with the tour players, they're so well connected for those things.
Yeah,
and that's why the club face is so stable.
Yeah.
And actually no one practices those.
No.
But it has knock-on effects to the long run.
100%. And it's the most frustrating shot, isn't it? Because you've hit a great drive on a short par 4. Yeah. You're trying to do everything to stick it in the fairway, and then you've got 70 yards to go, and then you're sick all over your shoes, and you hit it 15 yards, right? And then you're sick again, and then you just want to pick the ball up and move on to the next hole, don't you? So it can be a really...
There's no bunker in the way you can putt the next one.
Yeah, exactly. I believe James has just posted the link to Peter's podcast, or my podcast on Peter's channel. Where was I? We've had lots of questions coming by the looks of it. Excuse me, everybody. So Alistair Campbell, I believe... No, sorry, bear with me. Rishi, Daniel Winterbottom. I was wondering if you could please hit and compare the Ventus Red ATS versus the hazardous RDX Red 70s in fairway woods.
The Ventus Red 8S and the RDX Red. Okay. Yep,
Yes. Daniel Winterbottom says, my phone was playing up and kept sending my questions when I was still writing it. You're very welcome. It's no problem at all. David Chow, good day team. Good day, David. What's comparable to the NS Pro 950 GH Neo?
What's comparable to it?
Yes.
Well, it's the KBS Tour Light in a reg. They're both 95 grams, both mid-balance. That would be the closest one to it that's readily available.
Love that. Love that he's answered that over there. You can't see him in shot, but you still heard. Shako asks, I fight an inside takeaway. Do you have a thought or drill or feel to have the shaft more vertical during the backswing? I absolutely do, my friend. Get yourself set up to the golf ball. Take your top hand off and put the thumb on the top of the golf club. And what you're going to do is when you swing the golf club back, you're going to make your left shoulder and your right hip move with each other. And you're going to push your left hand down. And so now, when you push your left hand down, you can see how the club head stays out in front of your hands. So when you now take the golf club away, push your left hand down, you'll start to get the club head out in front of you, which will then make the shaft stand up a little bit more. And before you know it, you'll be hitting it down the middle of the fairway. A bit thin, that one, but you know what I mean. So hopefully that helps. Gary Picking asks, hi Stuart, working on straightening the left leg and getting the left hip behind me at impact, but starting to hit the ball fat. Any ideas? Yeah, so once you start to get that left hip back and that right shoulder forwards, it's super easy that you've still got that golf club unloading, Gary. So what I would get you to do is pop your left hand back, your left hand on behind your right elbow. And then just start to make some through swings where you start to feel how your right shoulder, left hip are moving. With a light grip, you now start to feel like you can load the shaft and make the golf club unload over here. So I'm pulling on the handle. I'm using my left leg, right shoulder, which allows the golf club to load and unload more in this section, which will then start to get that ball turf interaction.
So RDX Red, which was the staple shaft of all the manufacturers of stock shaft last year, has all been replaced by the Denali Red. So
Denali.
I'm going to hit the Denali Red. I know it's not the RDX Red, but it's the closest one that I can to it. And then the Ventus Red.
Beautiful.
Just so that we've got something for the comparison for the chaps.
Sculptura X2 says, I'm into my cycling and ride Merida Sculptura models. There you go. That's where the handle. We appreciate you answering that question. Nice to fire a question back at you.
Kind of goes both ways, isn't it?
I know.
Great.
I know. What a lovely audience we've got. Now, if you haven't seen this Monday Night Live before, give it a thumbs up if you're enjoying it. And if you have enjoyed it, maybe check back next week. We got a really good looking lad on, Nick, one of the fitters. He's got a bit of spiel as well. Simon's swanning it off to California.
Yeah, I'll be No, I'll be there on a Monday. I'll be, fly out Sunday.
Right.
Fly out Sunday, fly back Wednesday night. Don't know who I'll be. I don't think I'm not going to know who I am on Friday.
Yeah.
So the Denali Red is a similar one to the RDX Red. Basically, it's a similar profile that it was the Hazardous previously. Denali, they're both. The Hazardous is a Project X shaft. Denali is a True Temper shaft. Project X shaft. They're both essentially. It's the one they've chosen for the stock shafts this year. Red profile, softer tip, designed to get a little bit of kick, as is the Fujikura one as well. But obviously the 70 gram is lighter than the 80, so a little bit of response through the bottom end, not overly heavy. I've got that little bit fat strike-wise, but gives you a little bit back through the ball. So you're not going to have to work this shaft as hard. So it's a little bit light balance-wise for me, just losing the bottom end, but you're not going to work it hard to get it through the ball. And structurally gives a bit of kick and feedback. Now, Ventus Red is not a harsh profile. It's still got a bit of tip responsiveness, but by going up to the 8, it's a darn sight heavier. So we've stuck an extra 10 grams into it, which structurally adds rigidity, even though it's still just the S-Flex. You've got more material. It's a little bit more solid, but there's just more mass. So if you tend to kind of pull down the ball a bit more, kind of use the weight a little bit more, then the heavier weight's a good thing. In this instance for me, I'm going to have to work quite hard. So I've got to fetch that through a little bit. I've always been a little bit better with slightly too much weight than slightly too little. But moderate launch, mid spin, bit of feedback for an 85 odd gram shaft, quite responsive. But Ventus very tight at impact because of the Velocore material, but the Red just gives you a little bit of kick back through the tip, but much more solid because of the extra mass.
Love it. Love it. Alistair Campbell. Thanks, Simon, for earlier answer. A follow-up, please. God, Alistair, how would you categorise the i230, P790 and Callaway Thai Fusion, and how do they compare against each other?
So 230 it's kind of more towards the player's end. It's not, yes, it's got a bit of progression in the head, but it's designed more for mid-launch, mid-spin consistency. It's not, you've got the i530 for the hot model. 790, I think, was the other one, wasn't it?
Yep.
790. So 790, the new one is quite a strong hitting head. Really good for ball speed. Designed to launch a bit more, but lower on spin, and definitely more. It's very much on the far end of the distance, players' distance irons, erring into. I'm going to call it a game improvement, but a distance head. But they've done a really good job with that head this year. I'm quite impressed with that from a ball speed performance. And then the Apex Thai. Black one, the titanium one, actually retains quite good spin for a head of that speed. Again, good ball speed off it, quite a heavy head weight. That's the only thing. The 790 isn't as light as last year's model, so if you're going longer than the standard, you can't get the same swing weights. But the Apex Titanium or Thai is good for ball speed, pretty good for spin, really good all-round head, but dear. Hope that answers it.
Matthew Bates, evening chaps, coming in this time next week for a fit. Currently in Oban CT100 shafts in stiff. Anything similar to try?
Yeah, I mean you've got the Tor, some of the KBS, the top end of the Tor lights in terms of weight, bottom end of the Tor Vs, which will feel a little bit more stout than the CT100s. There are some composites, some of the steel fibers of that weight as well. I think then very much the bottom end of the Project X Reds will be out fairly soon. We haven't got those in quite yet, but they're going to be in the demo rack. But the 5.0 I think is 100 grams in that, so that sits at that end as well. The low end of the Project IOs, but they swing more tip. There are 950 Neos. Yeah, there are a number.
Golf Nerd 3. What brand club length ruler do you use?
So we don't use a brands one, but we use this sort of there's basically there have been 2 or 3 different ways of measuring club length, but there's been one amongst club makers which has been more used than others. There are 2. There's one that you literally put the club kind of face down, so that you'll essentially measure through the length of the shaft to the grounding point. and that's the one we use. And there are some where you measure, there's a little kind of upkick on the end that you butt it up against based on the lie angle, then you measure on that. We use the face down one. It's both are pretty widely used. Some brands like Ping measure their woods differently, so they come out with about a ½ inch different length than most other brands do. So industry standard in golf is kind of an interesting one, but we use the face down. I wouldn't actually, James would probably be able to tell me what it's called, but the actual name, but I don't know what it's called. But, yeah.
So Golf Nerd went on to ask a bit more in questions of which you've duly answered. Chris Powell, hi gents, interesting watching Rory flatten out wedge shots this weekend. Something I've been working on. Stu, any tips for maintaining good tempo while taking yardage off wedges? I think the problem that comes with pitching, it's a pitching theme this evening, is that in transition, where's the wedge gone? It's super easy for you to get that golf club loading. As I said earlier, when you're pulling on driver, you're pulling on 7-irons, the club can tend to want to narrow because of the pure weight of it. And now when you do that in a short pitch shot, when you transition and you start to narrow the angle, it's easy to stick the leading edge into the ground. So tempo, yes, but really tempo can really sort of fall into pitching in an aggressive sense, like your long game. I would like you to think more about the radius of the head. So in transition, when you're changing direction, I would like you to think about almost the ferrule of the golf club and your right shoulder, making sure that this gap, when you're playing short shots, doesn't narrow up. So when you're playing a short shot, if it narrows up, it can get a little bit too stuck into the turf. Whereas if you're changing direction and you can now see how that golf club doesn't narrow up on the way down, it will start to make you feel like you collect it a bit more on the bottom rather than getting that leading edge into it.
The ferrule is that bit.
Very good, very good.
Just in case.
So yeah, so a bit more radius control in change of direction would be better than tempo, in my opinion. That's that one.
That would explain why I get lots of divots.
Yeah, get a bit quick in transition and narrows up a bit too much. Tony C, if a shorter drive at 44.5 is better for higher handicap players, where is the cut over point from mini driver to proper driver? I assume mini driver have shorter shafts.
Yeah, mini drivers are generally 43 3/4. So almost basic, if you take a 3-wood shaft and put it into a mini driver, it's that shaft length, the difference in the length of the head from effectively from the kind of grounding point to the top of the hosel between the mini driver and the fairway, that's the only difference. The shaft length stays the same. So when we put in, for example, the Callaway, or not all, because PXG's secret weapon kind of mini driver thing, that's a smaller head, so it doesn't quite translate. But for the Callaway mini drivers, certainly, from a 3-wood shaft at 42 3/4 to 43 inches, straight into one of the mini driver heads is 43 3/4. So that's their standard length. Then say 44.5, you're about another 3/4 inch longer to a shorter driver length.
So we've got 2 minutes left. Tom Ashmore, what are your thoughts on Rory going back to last year's woods and then winning this weekend? Is there much difference between the heads, or do you think it's purely confidence and being comforted? In few words?
I think head shape's key, and I think that's just taking him a little bit of time to dial in the spin, the looks, and everything for him. And he was darn good with the QI10.
Yorkshire Blade, hi Simon, just got new S3 irons. I grip the club correctly, but find as I go to the shorter clubs, the toe starts turning at address. Is this a lie issue?
Quite likely, yeah.
The left rough, good deal on the TSR 2/3, 16.5, and invest in shaft, or are GT woods that much better?
Low on the face of GTs are definitely better.
The left rough, Stu, can you get Nick Doherty on for a live? I'd say Coltart would be crack too. Trouble with Nick getting him on is travelling around, but I will endeavour to do that this season for sure. Daniel Winterbottom, thanks for your red shaft comparison. I like my Hazardous red, just want something heavier and more stable. Use Modus 130 and 4 iron, then drop to a 70 gram RDX red. Stefan Davies, high thoughts on a 4-wood versus 3-wood for club golfer?
A lot of the time, a lot of the heads now are low spin, so it just means getting higher launch and easier flight off the deck. So quite relevant for a lot of players.
And finally, quite fitting, Josh writes,
But
has Simon matched his clothing to his ferrule tonight?
No, not quite. That one, the colours match St George's Hill, red, green and blue. That is why that ferrule is that colour.
And as the hour strikes 7, we get through the questions.
But I wouldn't put it past me, it's a bit of that one.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for being with us again this week. It's always a pleasure to have all of your questions. We are going to be here next week. James and I are going to be on here, but Simon's going to be away swanning it around California and enjoying himself. So do check out the abuse that he'll be getting next week. And Nick will be here too. Have a great time away.
Thank you very much. Looking forward to getting some in-depth chats with some of the guys at Titleist on R&D and things like that. So
Brilliant.
Should be good.
Superb. Okay, well, thank you so much for being with us. We really enjoy these shows. Do check us out next week, 6 p.m. Monday night. Have a good week.